Good morning, class. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Please join in fast. Yeah. Good morning, Ravi. Good morning, Rahul. Good morning, Nina. Yeah, shall we start class? Today, I'm talking about how countries join together to form some kind of trade unions so that they enable each other to conduct business better. All right. So here we are. Here we are. If you see that I have called these trade blocks as BLOCS, the K is avoided when you talk about regional trading blocks. All right. So here we are talking about how these trade blocks in different countries have enabled these countries to do trade better. Now I will request you to open your slides. In fact, I have given you today. You open the um, you open the sorry. You open the Word document that says types of trading blocks. Okay. Now see, trading blocks. One second. I'll just okay. Trading blocks are usually done by different countries. The sad part is many times these countries yeah, the sad part is many times some of these countries are powerful and some of these countries are not so powerful. So what happens is the more powerful countries sometimes take advantage of the situation of the lesser powerful countries. Let me explain it to you like this. If you imagine we are all the residents of a country which is still a developing country. Imagine there is a country that is a developing country, and what will people look for? What will the labor of that country look for? They will look for the opportunity to work in another country in a better position. They will want to go and earn a better living, perhaps live in a bigger country where more salary is paid, and they would may want to settle there. May want to emigrate to that country. Second is they may not want to emigrate, but they want to work in a more powerful country which gives them more salary, and then come send the money back to their own country. And when they finish their work life, they may want to come and retire in their own country. The implications are two different ways. If a person from his own country goes and settles in another country, then the country gets the benefit. The country which has allowed the immigration may require the type of specialization that these people carry with them in intrinsically. That is one thing. The second thing is, if someone wants to go and work in another country and send back the money to his own country, then foreign exchange happens. The balance of payments of the developing country will improve. Why? There will be remittances from some other country in foreign exchange to that country. Then these other repercussions. We'll not go into whether it is good for a country or see, for the country which receives the remittances, it is definitely good. Depends on the other country whether it hurts them. There are some countries in the world, for example, Libya. If you go, if when the Indians used to go and work there, only a small part of their salary was allowed to be remitted to India. A large part of the salary they had to mandatorily spend in that country only. Now, this is for the safety of the foreign exchange of that country. They follow their own policies. But if you see all the Gulf countries, Indians go and work in the Gulf countries and they send money to India. It is said that when you look at the balance of payments of India, one third of the country's remittances that come into the country are those that Indian workers abroad, are remitting to their families back in India. So these are the repercussions. So the first thing that countries are worried about when they make trade blocks is that if we allow mobility of labor, then the country which is poorer than us will send, or the country doesn't need to send, people themselves from a poorer country will emigrate to our country. Then there will be differences in labor wages. For example, say a foreign worker comes to our country and says, say an Indian worker is working for 50,000 rupees. Imagine a foreign worker and says, I can do the same work with whatever you give me. Give me 30, I can manage. I can manage to eat here and send to my country. Imagine a situation. Then the workers of that country will not be in a happy position. The competition will be there, and it's an unhealthy competition. Apart from that, the labor market will be flooded, and a lot of other similar. See, and for laborers who come in, you have to provide them, accommodation, sanitation. It's a long chain of, excuse me, events that has to happen. So whenever two countries or more join together and have some kind of regional economic cooperation or regional trading blocks, then these are the first thing the countries are worried about is mobility of labor from a poorer country to a richer country. So what happens is, countries when they make regulations, they will go step by step. In the first step, they will allow only certain factors of production, but they will not allow mobility of labor. For example, you have the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Area. North American Free Trade Area consists of Canada, North America, and Mexico. You will realize that of the three countries, Mexico is relatively not as strong as the other two countries. So, in NAFTA, mobility of labor is not allowed. but mobility of factors of production is allowed. It is said Mexico is highly polluted because the other two countries have have managed to put producing um, polluting kind of industries all in Mexico. For example, American industries which are rather polluting, which can create pollution, are in Mexico. Now there is a beautiful movie, if you would like to see, where Jennifer Lopez has starred in that movie. And if you go and look into BBC, you will see that this movie is based on real life reports that have emerged in Mexico. You see, in Mexico, in India, if farmers do not pay taxes, the government can maximum confiscate their bank accounts, or many times the Indian government, many times, has waived off the loan, because farmers are the people who give our country the basic food we require. If we don't support them, who else will we support? Subsidies. Now, in my last 2 3 classes ago, we talked about how India has a standoff with the WTO as regards the subsidies, the minimum supporting price, MSP, that the government is offering to farmers for their produce. You see, this minimum support price is very important for farmers. When farmers are at the mercy of middlemen, you imagine the only kind of income a farmer gets will be from his produce. You look at the situation in our country. Imagine a farmer has grown green gram. He takes, in Kannada we say hesru bele, hesru kalu. Let us take. Bele means the gram is split into two. This is kalu, hesru kalu. That is the whole green gram. Imagine he has about 1000 kgs of green gram, and he says, okay, today I have harvested, the gram is ready. Let me take it to the mandi and I will sell it there. So he has something in his mind. He says, I will sell it for 70 rupees per kilo and I will get 70,000 rupees. So he says, with this 70,000 rupees, this truck that my neighbor has lent to me, I have to pay, say, 8,000 rupees. I will pay him 8,000 rupees for his up and down charges from 70,000, and I'll bring the 62,000 home. This 62,000, I'll have to lead my life for the whole year, as it will be his treasury for the full year. Imagine a small time farmer. But when he goes to the mandi is the agricultural market. But when he goes there, he finds that the people are saying, green gram, no market for green gram today. Nobody is buying. There is no buyer here for green gram, and no one is buying. Imagine the farmer goes round the mandi, literally asking people, anybody wants to buy the green gram, etc. And no one seems to be buying that day. If you do not get a buyer, your crop has no value. So quietly the farmer leaves the place without telling the truck driver, because he doesn't have 8,000 rupees that he has to pay to the truck driver to take the green gram back home. If he takes the green gram, or he will take the green gram back home, come again, and he has to pay another 8,000 rupees, the precious 8,000 rupees. So if you see that kind of situation to evade, our government has made a lot of efforts where farmers can check the price of their crop online. There are portals, websites, and government supported portals where a farmer can check the price that he can get for his green gram and then go. There is a very beautiful initiative by ITC. ITC has started something called eChoupal, CHOUPAL. eChoupal initiatives means there are kiosks in many villages. Now, suppose the same farmer, before he decides to go to the mandi, just takes a little amount of his green gram, goes to an ITC kiosk, shows them the green gram that he has, and tells them, see, this is the green gram. Please tell me what grade is the green gram that I have grown, and how much can I expect for it. So they will take the green gram, they'll evaluate it, and they'll tell him, see, you have grown very good green gram. This is A grade. Okay. Now we are giving you two choices. We at ITC would like to buy your green gram at 85 rupees a kg. If you wish, you can bring your green gram here, or we will collect it from your house, and 1000 kgs you have, we will give you 85,000 rupees at the rate of 85 rupees per kg. We are offering you 85 because we are lifting at one go 1000 kgs. On the other hand, they will tell him, see, your green gram is extra A grade. If you go to the mandi, do not accept less than 90 rupees per kilo. Suppose you go to the agricultural market, you can demand 90 rupees per kilo for your green gram because it is A grade. So it is left to the farmer. Does he want to spend whatever money and go to the mandi and give? If you look at that, it is better they come, and instead of spending on the truck to go to some nearby agricultural market and take his chances of selling at 90, he might say, okay, pick it up at 85 because it takes me 8,000 to go to the agriculture, say, or minimum 5,000. So pick up. So these are the alternatives that are there in our country. You look at the situation that the farmer faced before and the situation he is facing now. So there are portals, websites, and even apps that are available to farmers to find out when and where he can sell his produce. These are the support systems. Now, I was talking to you about agricultural subsidies, and before that, I was talking to you about trade blocks. In the trade blocks, I was telling you that some countries unite to make conduct trade, and to conduct trade in a better, easier way. They form regional economic corporations called trading blocks. And by these trading blocks, they will start at the basic, like first thing, they will say, my borders are open. You need not pay any border tax, or we are not going to put any protectionist laws because it is coming from your country. Our country borders are open. We are going to cut down certain taxes, octroi, etc., to make goods from your country simpler to cross the border into our country and sell here. Similarly, you open your borders for the goods from our country. So it starts with basic things like opening borders for goods. All right. As I told you, people are very skeptical about allowing uh, factors of production like humans. Okay, labor from one country is not allowed to go into another country. I told you what they fear. All right. Now, when you go, the more and more, when the trading blocks become more and more sophisticated, as they go into, more heavier, like financial implications are removed, and some all these restrictions. It starts with border restrictions, tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers are removed, etc. Later on, any other financial implications are loosened up so that people can take the goods across each other's countries and have smooth international trade and flow of goods. As you go up, it becomes such that the trading blocks involve countries which in the stage of development are similar to each other. In such situations, then the mobility of labor is allowed. See, if you see the European Union, there is mobility of labor because most of the countries there have similarity in the gross domestic product, or GNP, GDP is almost similar. So, mobility of labor is very much allowed in the European Union. Now, please, there are, like, I'll give you some examples. We have, excuse me, hope you all are doing well, class, and you're safe. Okay. So, first we have preferential trade areas. That is, you have this like ASEAN, then SAARC. These are the things that you see first. Next, it becomes free trade areas. So, some more barriers is allowed, is removed. Then, as you become more and more sophisticated, there is a custom union. If you see the word document I have given you, a custom union has no tariff barriers. Plus, they agree to a common external tariff among the members. Okay, they negotiate as a single member. Then, still more sophistication as you go towards still more sophistication, you come into an area called the common market. Now, if you see in the European Union, for example, before it became the European Union, you had the ECM, European Common Market. So you have the common market. All barriers to trade in goods, services, capital, and most important, labor are removed in common markets, which means the factors of production, that is, people can go from one country to another, seek jobs in any country that their own country is involved in common market. Now, after common market came the European Union. The European Union was so sophisticated that they have made a parliament for the sake of only trade. There are ministers, representatives from all parts of the European Union, and there is a parliament that is there only for the sake of conducting trade. Okay. Now, I have given you certain advantages and disadvantages of trading blocks. I will not go into all that. You can read it, it's simpler. And then I will come to different types of trading blocks. The first one I told you, preferential trade areas like ASEAN, SAARC. ASEAN is ASEAN, and SAARC is SAARC. Then you have the free trade area. I gave you the example of NAFTA. And there is one more called EFTA. Okay, EFTA. Next is Customs Union. An example of Customs Union here is Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. Okay, so they have, see, not only among themselves they have some rules, but when they deal as a trading bloc with other countries who are not their members, they have a common policy that they follow for the other countries. You have the common market. You have Mercosur, MERCOSUR. Southern Cone Market is called. Then East African Common Market and West African Common Market. The European Union was the Common Market, ECM, before it became the European Union. Now, the European Union is basically an economic union. All right. Here, it is like a big country itself. Okay. They have even, as you know, the European Union has even adopted a common currency which we know as the euro. The euro was introduced in the year 2000. All right. So there we are. Then full integration like the United States. All right. Now, I want to give you a little bit about what has happened. Recently is, I think this is December 2020. China and 14 countries agreed to set up the world's largest trading bloc, encompassing 1/3 of all economic activity in the world. It is called RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. All right, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and the largest. This is supposed to be RCEP is supposed to be the largest. This is from BBC. If you want to read more about it, please knock on BBC News and ask for CAPS RCEP, and you will get. Okay, so I have given you a little bit. It is when you talk about regional economic corporations or trading corporations, not corporations, sorry, you can talk about this. All right. Now there are I have given you a little bit of information. Please take a look. You can use it to answer your book. One second, I need to open another this thing. Okay. See, there is a partnership called Trans-Pacific Partnership. This trade bloc has agreed to open accession talks with the United Kingdom. As you know, there is an interesting development that took place in our world, which happened last year finally, and this was because of Britain's intention of exiting from the European Union. Britain decided suddenly a couple of, I think 4 years before that it wants to exit from the European Union, and then this was called Brexit. If you see in the past 4 years, there were a lot of barriers that were posed to Britain in the Brexit. What happened is there were a lot of internal policies. Government itself had to tumble down for their for their attitude of pro or against Brexit. which we will not discuss here. But Brexit came into being after a whole lot of discussions within the country and outside the country. The biggest worry that common people felt was, what about uh, Britons who were um, what about Britons who were in the, I mean, class father? What about the British people who were in the European Union? And if Britain exits from the European Union, what about their fate? How would they be treated? Was a question. We still do not know, because we are very, now that Britain has exited from the European Union, we still do not know, because the whole world is sadly concentrating on the aftermath of the pandemic that we are facing. So I haven't yet read any articles on any from about any British people who are living in any other country in the European Union and not in Britain, and whether they have any studies have been made, we are not sure. But the apprehensions of the common people were there, and when you do a big step like this, the repercussions which you foresee may not happen. There may be other repercussions. So let us hope all the repercussions are good for both the European Union as well as Britain. Okay, so you have, let me talk to you about that. Come to that, the 11 country, 11, I've given you something. No, sorry. This is this thing. I have another one. I've given you three, I think. Hmm? You please go into 10 major regional trading blocks. I would like to talk a bit about that one. 10 major regional trading blocks in the world. Some of them I have already mentioned, and here they are. One is ASEAN, ASEAN, APEC, like OPEC, it is Asian, BRICS, European Union, NAFTA, CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States. It is formed by the 13 states, broken off states from USSR. I want to, before I go ahead, I want to tell you something interesting that happened. See, in 1989, suddenly USSR used the policy they called Glasnost, Glasnost, and they released all the countries that they were holding. I would should not say hostage. They were controlling some other states like Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Ukraine. I have given you in one of the presentations, you can see. So there were some countries that they were controlling. So what happened is USSR became Russia. Now let us look at the world over. Because of the Cold War, many countries of the world had proven, given their allegiance to US, and they were all capitalist countries. For example, you had Germany. Germany was West Germany and East Germany. There was a wall in Berlin between West Germany and East Germany. West Germany people were called Westies, and East Germany people were called Aussies. Aussies and Westies they were called. There was a particular security unit that was kept ready at hand to literally shoot down anybody who attempted to cross the wall. You may have your own sister, or your parents in East or West Germany, and you may be on the other side, you were not allowed to go. And if you tried to climb the wall in desperation, there was an elite security force specially kept only to shoot down anybody who tried to cross the wall. And then at the end of 1989-90, there were some very strange things, good things that happened. Some were good, some we don't know whether to say good or not, that happened during the 1989-90. The first thing, one of the first things that happened was the fall of apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid, you may say, ma'am, what is it? Because you have not lived in a time when apartheid was present. Apartheid was the policy that our very own Mahatma Gandhi talked about. You know, in his book, you come to know about trains where they did not allow him to climb up, and says, because this is a coach meant for whites only. Okay? We don't mean whites as in English or Americans. It was just white, and there the Dutch were ruling. So there we have, there were coaches meant for whites only. There were hotels, restaurants. There were so many, I'm not sure about hospitals, etc. Probably. Everywhere there seem to have been a lot of areas where people other than whites were restricted. Whites means white people, white skinned people. So, this policy of whites only was apartheid, and South Africa diligently followed it till 1990. Because of this whites only discriminatory policy that was kept alive by South African government, you heard of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was in prison for a whole 27 years. And one of the first things that happened after apartheid was Nelson Mandela was released. He fought the elections, became the president of South Africa till before his death. He ruled and then he retired from politics, and great man, noble person.